Advisory Committee. And we have, Jessica has sent us the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? No.
I also, nothing.
Okay, I have a question, but doesn't get into the approval. So let's have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Fine, the minutes are approved. The question I had was, there was a question going to Gordon about the right process for us to follow for posting items on the electronic sign. Any instructions for us on that?
I thought I responded to you. Okay, all you had to do is to
Call Chief Reed.
reach out to Chief Reed, okay, give him the language, and they would be happy to do that.
Fine. Let the minutes reflect that. Okay. Okay. Item number 3, Greg
Okay,
and Peter, the precipitation and well report.
and Peter is here? No.
Peter is virtually here.
So this is kind of I got myself into a bit of a surprise here working with USGS. I had asked them to repair the larger of the wells, the Hay Beach well, the metering system, and they came out right away, like the next day, and fixed it. But they did all the other checks at the same time. And so I only have like a 2.5-week window of what was there previously. So all of this is draft and probably should say so because it's just the numbers are, it's hard. It's been difficult to align each month to keep it aligned so that I'm looking at the month and week as close as I can, and also to try and get it here fresh, which is the week before our meetings.
Okay.
So the basic line on here was that the summer drawdown is operating. It's starting later than normal. It seems to be accelerating from now that I have that the data from Goat Hill. The shallower wells actually increased this month, which I don't quite understand either. Because as the numbers, Peter advised me, the numbers, he had something along the lines of 1.7 or 1.8 inches of rain, and yet lo and behold, the shallower wells are above the median, all of them. So the conclusion, and then I'll go through, just touch real quick on what else is. The residents should continue to conserve water and refrain from wasteful practices. In the long run, I think that at this point, we would be describing what our concern level was. And that's something that we have to work out in the drought program and the drought revisions, in that, are we going to try and use the DEC nomenclature or the DW, the national version? And as you know, I'm a major favor. I'm much more think that it's better to use the NIDS information. Anyway, national drought monitoring, we have 2 items. One is the state of New York, which is a straight green. They had no droughts at all. And we have, again, for the second consecutive week, we have Nassau County and half of Suffolk County are in abnormally dry. And from, I guess it's from Ronkonkoma out, we're just in none still. No, we have been so remarkably short of water. But that's what it looks like right now. The the table or the graph with aquifer height over mean sea level bumped up a little. It's basically a 25 percentile. And this is, if I calculated it right, and it was really just looking at the sheet, this is like the 5th time that we've had a July that is below, the 4th time that's below the number that we have right now. So it has happened before. The values for all of the wells, it's about 20% of the readings historically are below the number that we're at now. So it's not good, but it's what we got, I'm afraid. This chart will show you some of the differences with the higher wells, or the shallower wells, I should say, are all above the median, and 3 of the 4, big 4 are. We actually are slightly above the median on Manhasset well, which again is another one of those things makes you scratch your head. The final thing is the raw numbers, which is this chart here, and what that shows is that 3 of the wells has started to dip down. They're starting to see the summer drawdown, but Man Waring just continued gaining very, very slight, obviously. The numbers here you're looking at is between 3 and 8 inches. So that, oh, excuse me, that is feet, I'm sorry. So that's all I have to say about that. Unless there's any.
And I just have to correct an email. I'd said that we had a wet month in August. In fact, as Greg said, it was 1.78 inches. I had one entry with a decimal in the wrong place, so chalk it up to new data enter, but we're getting that in line. But yeah, rainfall is total rainfall is in the 21-inch range, and it is relatively low. May was our strongest rains, and unusual, May rains, and perhaps those are working their way out toward the nearshore areas.
That was 7 inches in May?
Yeah, something like that. Well, I can go back to the spreadsheet.
No, I think that's what.
Yeah.
Which, I'm thinking that the shallower wells are going to see more of that 7 inches quicker than the other.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That would make some sense.
For what it's worth, and I don't know if a valuable observation or not, it seems to me that the activity on the island is increasingly biased to late July and August, that people don't come out as much in July. At least that's my observation.
I think
And so that's where I think the crunch time is really when you're going to see the higher usage. I don't know why, but I spend a lot of time here, and I'm just watching. It's like it's slowly creeping up. Where now people like starting their weeks where they take off, or their consecutive weekends or what have you. So
I've heard people say, yeah, it's picked up, but it's not so bad.
yeah, well, it'll get
Somebody
there.
else in the back yelled, yeah.
August. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Mike, looking at this one though, my concern, of course, is looking at the winter lack of any kind of growth. I have some data, but I don't want to cut into the agenda time, so we want to go into it after the meeting or something.
But yes, winter was very low rainfall.
I can show you what.
What's the question?
No, it's not a question. I'm just saying, well, the winter spike isn't there. So, and I've been looking at the winter shortfall, the late fall, winter shortfall in rain versus normal years.
Been dry for a while.
As I said, I can, if we want to stick around after the meeting, we can look at that. I don't want to cut into the agenda.
okay, so I looked at this and I said, all right, the withdrawal is starting in late July, it's starting. if we take a typical withdrawal between, say, now and mid to late September to October 1, and we just paste it on our current figures, where are we likely to be? Are we likely to be in a really bad place, or are we likely to be okay? And obviously, to do that kind of a projection, you have to assume rainfall.
Yeah, so average rainfall and what.
Assume average rainfall and average, given where we are now, if you assume average rainfall and typical withdrawals, are we in a bad place when we get into the fall?
That's a good question.
If your rainfall doesn't hit 4 inches or more, you're losing.
But we're also, I think what he's incorporating is there's always a loss in that period, usually net. So if you assume the loss from here, what do we go from 20% to down 40%?
You lose 10%
median,
a month, basically.
10% a month, yeah.
You know, and the 10% is based on the prior number, so it's always a smaller number, but it's still down, way down. I mean, up at this year, 10%, 10%.
I don't try and, I plug the numbers in, so I guess that's that's the way it works in my charting.
To add to your thing, basically, what I'm thinking of and looking at is if your rainfall doesn't exceed what your ground is, your plants are sucking up, you're not going to add to the wells.
Right.
That's your, evapotranspiration.
Yep.
So you need significant rainfall events, like above 4
Yes.
inches in order to add anything. If you don't get that, you are going into a problem.
Well, I guess from a messaging standpoint, Eastern Suffolk County is okay as far as the state is concerned, right?
And the feds.
And the feds. Western Suffolk County and Nassau, not okay, but Eastern Suffolk County is okay.
Yeah.
Our well levels are, we know the withdrawals happening, but our well levels are more or less right now holding their own at a 25th percentile. Not a great place.
Not a great place.
We are facing the period of maximum withdrawal. So if we get average rainfall in August or from now until the middle of September, and we have average withdrawals from now until the middle of September, given our current starting point, where are we likely to be on September 15th or October 1st? Are we likely to be in an okay place? Or are we likely to be in a bad place?
Well, the only way I could answer that, I suspect, would be is that the way that I was talking about with the numbers, I have access to the Goat Hill, and they went down from the 3rd to today by about 0.4 of a foot. So that was like 18 days, 0.4 of a foot. Now, if you want to say, okay, if that continued, where are you? And if you had more people involved in drawing water, okay, do you want to take a look and say, well, let's say it was a 0.5 foot or 0.6 of a foot?
We could do it mathematically. Clearly, it's not going to happen like right now, but I think look at the last 5 years of what the average drawdown is in August and project that onto where we are now. What percentile does that put us into?
Yeah, and this is,
Maybe you want to look at what I have here.
this is important
Yeah.
because it drives the message that we need to send. Because if we're in an okay place now, but in all likelihood, we're
Pretty certainty that this is going to happen.
yeah, if there's a high likelihood that we're going to be in a bad place late summer, our messaging now ought to reflect that,
Yes.
as opposed to just going, everything's
It
fine.
doesn't, yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Okay, so
and
can
it
I
should
leave
be-
that with you?
Yeah, I can figure it out.
Okay.
I'll get you the tables that have, the numbers are laid out. It should be pretty easy to put together. And you want raw aquifer numbers, correct? Not no, there's no adjustment to seasonality because we're only looking at one season, not 1 month.
I'm not sure. I want to be able to answer that question.
And
Are
I
we,
think
are,
if you can look at what is the typical
Percent change.
percentile change from the median in August over the last like 5 years and project that onto this year, what does that
I guess.
further reduce our, it shouldn't be that hard.
I probably have something that looks like it already, actually.
Okay.
Of course, it's fine to get in my file system.
Okay, if you can do that and circulate
Yeah.
your rough answer by email, that would be great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is open items number 4. Drought policy guidance. This was Sean and Greg had this, 4A.
I mean, I think it's at the
You
point that
circulated it.
everybody needs to just sit down and group, comment on it and try to get that the next meeting, we've all added enough comments that we can just adopt it. I mean, I think there's still some changes that we want to make, but
Okay, when I read it a couple times, and I said to myself, do we need a paragraph that says, this is what the committee is going to consider? These are the factors the committee is going to consider when it makes its decision. And it has discretion it's going to look at trends and, it's going to look at the national indicators. It's going to look at, I like the separation between the national indicators, the local indicators. These are the local indicators. It's also going to look at trends. It's going to look at where we are in the season, and it's got discretion in terms of making a decision. It could use a sentence, which actually,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of there, but it could be more.
right, that was my own, and I'm happy to take a cut at that. Okay, so you want our comments on it? And the other thing you're recommending is that we switch away from the old verbiage to the, what is it, the N,
And the dues, the DEWS.
what does that stand for?
Whether, it's a, I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out. Okay,
There's a couple
Were
of.
you going to take a good guess, and then you're like, nah, I'm not going to try that.
whether D is,
DWS is likely weather service.
okay. Next, okay, so that's the drought policy guidance. You're looking for comments from us. Okay,
And with the goal that let's all dig in enough that we can try to adopt it next time so that move on.
yes.
Do you think we should look through, the two of us look through again and?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, and again, we're in the middle of summer. I haven't dug in as much as I'd like.
DEWS stands for Drought Early Warning System.
Okay,
My guess.
fine, thank
We're
you.
leaning in the right direction. It would have been easy.
All right. The community event schedule and a debrief from the Perfect Earth event. First of all, with regard to the Perfect Earth event, I would like to thank Sean in particular for, and you will also bring in other members of your team who pulled that off. We were well represented. The town was well represented. The event was very well attended. And the refreshments, which I understand you provided, were very welcome. So thank you very much for driving that.
Yeah, Tim Purcell was actually incredibly helpful and took care of the wine. I took care
And
of
also Doug.
and Doug.
Doug Sherrod from
Yep.
the Water Advisory Committee. He initiated this event. You see it's up on the screen, I believe, and share screen. Attendance was really great. But Doug, stuck with it, also brought together the Green Committee and the CAC to, have a really joint event. And I would just say that the presenters were just tremendous in terms of emphasizing the theme of, first of all, don't put chemicals and fertilizers into the ground. It's not necessary. Work with nature instead. And part of that meant don't clear all the leaves out of your property and bring them to the dump and then fertilize what you've drained away. Find natural areas of your property to create natural spaces for habitat, and for decomposition right in place. And I think the messages were really well received, and I think that it dovetails with a lot of things that we need to think about in terms of how we're handling both waste and also remediation in various places.
So, fabulous. Peter, you're also on in this for future community events. Could you just review the schedule with us?
We don't have a schedule of future community events. What Sean and I have been working on is an event concept called Shelter Island Water 101. And what we realized was that we really needed to work with all of you and liaisons and basically our whole group to have a very solid 101 presentation first before we begin an event, setting up an event. So we're focused primarily on that. I'm a little bit, I'm not in place because I'm a little hobbled with my ability and the amount of time I can sit per day right now. Hopefully that I'll get some help with that soon enough. But anyway, we have been working with targeting a presentation to the right level, to the community level, rather than to the more technical level that we sometimes think about things on, without dumbing it down too much.
Okay.
This is the standard event, right, that you host as part of the Green
Expo.
Green Expo. So that's on the agenda, and that's several different committees, including the WAC, that will do that one. I suspect that's going to be the entire agenda for the rest of the summer. I think the 101 one, I think we're hobbled by it's summer and everybody's got guests and it's a little harder to dig in. But I think part of it is seeing it as perhaps most advantageous with the whole bias of it is really education and then saying, so don't you want to know what's and test your water? So it will, I think, be best utilized in when we think about how we want to broaden testing and kind of pair it with that a little bit, too. So it's a little longer profile, and I think then I suspect there are other parts of this conversation, whether it's today or that we're going to talk about, like how are we getting more testing done? And then part of that would be using that as a way to encourage people to the table.
Just remind me, when's Green Expo?
The Green Expo is Saturday, August 23rd from 10 to 3.
Right. And traditionally, we've combined tables with other, we have so many water committees in Shelter Island. So with the Water Quality Improvement Committee, and, it would be good. It would be good to continue to think about working with other committees to have a sort of combined presentation there.
As I don't forget the name of the group that we had at this recent event, whatever Earth.
Perfect Earth.
Perfect Earth. Have they ever come? Because we should extend an invite to them for a Green Expo now.
So Tim Pertel usually manages all the groups, and I do believe they have come in the past.
Yeah.
I know that I'm gonna have the Peconic Estuary Partnership come. They're going to do a whole talk on septic grants and the program and how it's evolving now that the funding is stable. So I know they're gonna have a table. I believe Group for the East End will have a table. There's a whole bunch of
Yeah,
organizations.
I'll ask
that
him
are-
because it might be a nice follow-on to
Yeah,
just say, hey, if you want to keep, that gentleman had offered, one of his things was to come to your house and whatever. And if he set up a table, I'm sure he'd have a lot of people, that would say, I'd love to do it, kind of thing.
Tim is probably asking
Yeah.
them, but
I'll ask him.
see if it's on his list.
Okay, moving to the next item, irrigation. Remember at our last meeting, at the end of our last meeting, we unanimously adopted Sean's a resolution whereby we request the town board to focus on enforcement of the irrigation ordinance that's already on the books. And I've asked Reed Karen to tell us what the town is now doing, just so that we have a full context of that. And then also I'm going to ask Gordon and Meg to report in on the town board's reaction to our request. So Reed, you have the floor for a few minutes.
Reed Karen, building inspector. Yeah, our feelings were hurt. You said that we weren't enforcing. This is not the case.
Well, we didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Just to be clear, and certainly there's no, I think it's from my perspective anyway, because it was me pushing it, it's context, right? I think that I know that you guys came to my house several years ago and for the pool and said, hey, you still have some drip lines in there that I wasn't using, and so I pulled them all out. So you are enforcing in that context. My suggestion has been, particularly for nearshore areas, just walk along the street, a few of the major streets, and you can see all the drip lines and write the people a note and say, I don't show you having a permit for this, I don't have here, whatever. And it's relatively passive next step kind of thing. I know resources are an issue, but I think like when we're having these conversations about, I don't mean to be preachy by any interest, having these conversations about saving water and stuff like that, it's like we're doing all these things, but we're letting some people blatantly violate.
No, I'm half joking. I mean, I can see how it would look like we're not enforcing, but this is the problem, which is why I printed it out and made some notes. This is basically unenforceable. Irrigation. Yeah,
Chapter 82.
I mean, we play whack-a-mole all the time. We go around, if we do an inspection, we look around, and we do a lot of inspections. We look around, we look at the neighbor's property. The problem is, a couple problems. In the new nearshore overlay, you are allowed 250 emitters without requiring a permit. So we don't regulate that. In this, outside of the nearshore overlay, you are allowed 1,500 emitters before you need an irrigation permit. And the big problem, and that's if you look at the calculations, they calculate 1 gallon per emitter per hour. So that's 1,500 gallons an hour of water that could potentially be used that's not regulated. Now, the other thing is, I was thinking that the amusing way to do this would be like a role play thing, where you say, oh, you've got illegal irrigation, and then I play the part of the homeowner. The problem is when you go to the site and you see the irrigation, what we normally do is we do what we did with you, I guess, where we chip it into your court. We say, hey, you've got unpermitted irrigation. Now, if you're savvy, what you say at that point is, oh, no. I only have 249 emitters. The emitters in drip law are the holes.
Yep.
So the only way to verify it is to pull it all up and count it. Now, we can't do that. We can't, and in the center, that's 1,500 emitters, which is basically about, it's usually, all the hose varies, but it's usually about 1 emitter for every 1.5 feet. That's a lot of hose to pull up. So what we do is we chip it into your court. You were, I guess you were altruistic and you pulled it out. Usually what they do is they say, oh, no, we have. So what we do is we then require verification. And it used to be by a licensed irrigation technician, irrigation. The town a couple of years ago pulled that license, and now all you need is a home improvement contractor's license. So that person then writes a letter saying, yep, 249, I counted, or 1,499 emitters. This is not, you can see the dilemma.
Yeah, no, look, completely understand, and so I sympathize. The same text, and I'm just practical. And I've said this publicly many, many times. I walk my dog everywhere. I think if you walk down some of the main drags in nearshore areas, knowing 250 is your limit, you can kind of go, I see a hose that starts there, it's still going over here, it's going over there. I go like this with my finger, it's wrapped 3 times around the tree. They used 8 foot just for that tree. This is clearly more than 250 feet, write them a letter. Requires a little bit of work.
You know, but we do
I get
this,
it, but
we
like-
do this all the time. The problem is to enforce something, you need to hang your hat on something. My point is, this needs to be.
Oh, I know, that's the next thing that we want to try
Yeah,
to
no,
do.
in other
But I think
words-
there's going to be people, when you do that, if we start, and I'm not, look, this is you take 2 days in a month and you just walk down strips and you see, this guy looks like he's got 1,000 feet, and it's pretty obvious it's more than 250 feet.
We do this all the time. We go and we notify people, we write,
But you're doing it because you happen to be at a neighbor's house or you do whatever. I'm saying more proactively, just walk 5 or 6 blocks and note, boom, 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 I'm going to send you a letter.
We're hitting, well, anyway. I would say-
That's what I was suggesting.
I would
I understand what you're doing, but that is whack-a-mole, where the next level is choosing to be more proactive, because people know that I don't need.
We're hitting a lot of houses.
Okay.
In other words, what we're doing, I would argue, is more effective than, walking around and doing that, because we can actually get on people's properties. To do it, as you're saying, it would require resources that we don't have. The only way we can do it, I mean, we got 3 building inspectors, and I'm mostly doing administrative stuff now and plan review. We just simply don't have the man hours for it. And ultimately, that would not be particularly effective. You have to trust me on this because of this. If you want to do something effective, change the code, require some sort of a permit for everything. I have my own opinions about, irrigation in the nearshore overlay period, but that's just an opinion. I'm not here for opinions.
But we are interested in your opinion, Reed.
But
We are very interested in your opinion, that it helps us. So
I think that the main opinion I have is that this has to be rewritten so that it's enforceable. I think what's always happened is the town board, with the best of intentions, decides to ban irrigation or severely limit irrigation. And then they get complaints from all people that have irrigation and want it. The other thing is there's no real fines. And it's funny because right before this happened, last month I spoke to Teresa Masson, and I'm saying, what do you do about this? Because we had just had one where we had caught 5 people in, a couple days. And, went through this whole charade of enforcement. And, they sent, this particular installer, whose name, who shall remain nameless, sent in someone. And they said, oh, well, these are temporary irrigation to establish plantings. And they all went in yesterday. We're like, well, they couldn't have gone in yesterday because we saw them.
Fair
2
enough. I'll
weeks
be
ago.
back to you in 6 months or whatever, and then rip them all out.
Right. The point is that I've got a few things that I think would help. I think there needs to be a temporary irrigation permit so that when you get temporary irrigation to establish plantings, as is allowed, you come in and you get a permit for it. And so the timer starts ticking. Instead of us finding it and then blaming that it's to establish plantings.
Some people have seemed to perceive that that is already the requirement.
Okay,
Yeah.
So,
Right.
that I believe you have that interpretation that actually is what is
Well,
a little less explicit in the code, but that is the case. And if that's the town board's view, that that's what the code says, make it clear
Well, we've been,
and say you all need a permit.
we've been enforcing it that way, but there's nothing in the code that specifically says that. It should be in the code so that we can then make them rip it out right away when we see it. And there's a form, and what Teresa said is that in Southampton, they have really onerous fines. And it's per incident per day, and the fines stack up. Part of the problem is, if it goes to, goes to court, they get $100 fine or $300 fine. That's the cost of doing business for a lot of people.
Okay, so
Can I just one thing and then we'll move on? So like, look, honestly, I'm not really thrilled, right? Because I think we're just status quo. I love the fact that you actually are saying you're catching a lot more people because we don't hear about that. I personally like to be a little more proactive. I guess one question would be, we have not been able to move forward irrigation code despite talking about it for several years. Peter and I are going to try to rejuvenate that, but that's still going to be a year, guaranteed. Well, it's going to be a while.
Doesn't happen.
So one question would be, if there is either permitting and a fine or something, would the town board consider short form changes? 3 lines, 4 lines, makes sense, insert them into the code. It's a temporary fix until we get, whatever. So that's the kind of thing of, we can wait a year and a half or a long time, because I can guarantee you that we're not going to adopt an irrigation code in quickly, but you can adopt 3 changes in the lines to give him more power just to move in that direction. So I'd love for you to consider the openness rather than we really need to change the whole thing. Well,
Well, there's not
maybe
much,
just give him
there's
the,
not much to it to change. It could be
Right.
changed very easily.
yeah,
And the other thing that I was gonna say, I gotta get out of here because I've got
Yeah.
a meeting I've gotta go to. I don't mean to cut you off. But the other thing that I think is really important, that sort of turns this into a charade, is that we have no way of verifying the actual use. So you're obligated, if you put in a cistern, to submit water receipts for the previous year. Well, we had someone who they were very altruistic, trying to do the right thing, believed in conservation. They redid their house and their landscape. The first year, and it was not a huge property, it was reasonably sized, I think, somewhere between 1.5 and 2 acres. Their water bills were $72,000. Well, nobody,
they're not doing it, No, I've heard that they
That's very
they
unusual.
photocopy last year's letter and, put a new date on it and send it to you and play,
Yes.
play games like that. So,
Okay, so
And so,
actually,
let me
I'm going
just-
to exercise
Yeah.
chairman's prerogative here,
Yes.
because we got
Sure.
we'll move
time.
on.
Not going to move on. I'm going to say, Sean and Peter, if you want, get with Reed and come back in August with short form changes to the code to make it enforceable.
Yeah, it sounded like Meg had something to add to making it simple, keeping this simple, stupid.
So we pretty much just wrapped up wetlands code and site plan, so irrigation is the next code in the queue. So I would like to start working with like a legit committee to do a full rewrite. I don't think it's gonna take us that long.
Okay.
I mean, we finished these last 2 in a few months, so I would like to just do it right the first time. So I know it was Peter, Sean, Stella, Lori, well, add Reed to the committee. There was a group of people we had together working on. So we can rekindle that group. We have our notes. I think everyone was told at the last meeting to look at the current irrigation regulation and come up with your recommendations for changes. And then we were going to reconvene and look at that. And then there was a whole bunch of transitions, things moved, and it got delayed. But I think we could pick up where we left off. That would be great.
So,
Meg, I could forward you the last step in the, we had a small email list. There was a nice group. It's a group that includes landscapers. It's a group that includes Elise, who's online here with us, was part of that group. So I could just forward you the last email when we did meet, not that, it was a little while ago, but not
Yeah.
that far back. If you could circulate, where you're at, where we think we're at in terms of, proposed code changes, things for people to be thinking about, that would help. and we can reconvene that group as in a meeting format.
Completely reasonable. If we're saying we're moving within the next few months, we're going to concentrate on it, the board's supportive of making it a priority, then we get there too, like, so.
We can do it on Zoom or, whatever's, make it easy, but, Yep.
Okay,
So we're
So,
willing to leave.
thank you.
Yeah.
August is too fast for you to come back?
Yes,
We can start our meetings in
we'll
August.
start a meeting.
All right,
We
so
won't have an answer for you in August.
all chairman can do is apply pressure. So I'll ask this group for a progress report in August. Okay?
Can I say one word before I leave?
Yeah, sure.
Low meters.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Members of that committee were Meg, Sean,
Peter will send it to us.
Peter,
Peter, Sean, me,
Stella, and Lori.
And there were some other people.
Okay,
Get it together for you.
all right, got it. Thank you. Peter,
Yes.
short update on Fresh Pond. Celebrate our successes.
Yes. So, as you all know, we have been monitoring Fresh Pond on a lot of levels, nitrogen levels, phosphorus levels, and clarity through SecuDis measurements for 8 years through the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program. For the last 2 years, we've engaged in what we call short-term cleanup, or harvest/cleanup. And last year we had harvested 2.7 tons of lily pad leaves and stems from Fresh Pond. Also algal mats came along with that. This is last year. Prior to that, we'd had 2 readings of a meter of clarity in Fresh Pond. 2 weeks later, 2 meters of clarity. 4 weeks later, 3 meters of clarity, 11 feet of crystal clear water. So we were pretty stunned. This year we're thinking about doing this process twice. We are actually scheduled to do that. This is entirely funded by the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association, and people who've contributed to us. The town doesn't really participate in this, except in the sense of helping us get permits in place and contracting with Solitude Lake Solutions, which does the actual harvesting. This year, we did the harvesting earlier, hoping that we would do a later harvest. That was July 1st and 2nd. Machinery had a little bit of a problem on July 2nd, so they revisited on the 7th and did a half a day of cleanup then as well. In the 2 readings prior to that, neither reading of clarity in Fresh Pond was above a meter. We were actually 0.9 meters a week before and 0.9 meters 3 weeks before in June. So it wasn't a very good start to the season. On July 6th, in the midst of their cleanup, but after having done harvests on the 1st and 2nd, we had risen to 1.5 meters clarity already. 2 weeks later, we had risen to 1.9, almost 2 meters of clarity, which is what we look for, because that means that people are swimming in clear water, clearer than what you get typically in the bay. But the lily pads have now reached full flower again. They're no longer needing to pull up nitrogen and phosphorus from their roots. And we're seeing that we've kind of peaked out, diminishing a little bit. We're back down to a little over 1.5 meters of clarity. However, August 5th and 6th, we're going to do another 2 days of cleanup. Hopefully we'll hit that 2.7. The first cleanup was only 1 ton removed. So, you can see we're actually making quite a bit of a dent. So August 5th and 6th, 6th and 7th, I apologize. We hope to get another 1.5 tons or more. And then we should hopefully see crystal clear clarity all the way through the end of the summer. I'm very eager to see what the response of the pond is at that point. This is all water that will flow. So when we talk about nitrogen removal, this is all water that will flow into Menantic Creek and Dickerson Creek. And starting this fall, because of the grant that we got from New York State, the WQI contribution that the town approved for half of the 25% match that was required for that. And again, the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association raising the rest of that match, $32,500. All of that was put together. So we will be putting in the bottom-up solution, filtering the bottom from the pond from the bottom rather than from the top. Each year, lakes will turn over as the seasons change. So the deep water is important to clean as well as the surface waters. So we're celebrating. We're celebrating how many people have turned out to support us. Almost 100 people showed up at $150 a person for the Ram's Head to fund these projects. And it's just an example of what the individual communities can do. And I actually think it's the more effective approach. Despite our conversation just now with Reed, I'm myself not a big fan of enforcement just because it creates pushback. I like, creating positive momentum, and this is one example.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Next item on the agenda is the new WAC member orientation. This continues to be a reporting item. But wait a minute here. So we're looking to do a 3-hour block on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday morning, date to be determined. You will see. We'll look at the town. We'll look at what we can see of one of the town building cesspools and understand that particular system and its layout. We will then go see a IA system, which is open and exposed so we can see its various components. And then we will go see the West Neck water system. It'll probably be viewed from outside. In other words, we won't be able to get into the well house. Joe is organizing this, and I will solicit dates from you by email that work for you.
Trying to do August?
I was going to start with the 29th, Tuesday or Thursday next week, Tuesday or Thursday the week after, see if we can get going with that. So
Thursday was the morning.
Thursday was the morning, Tuesday was the afternoon. It's basically a half-day block. No meals, no travel expense. Okay? All right, so look for my email on that.
In the afternoon, I'll bring the one.
Right, okay. I'm going to take the budget discussion, which is number 7, and move it to towards the end of the agenda because it's relevant to some of the things we're talking about. Number 8, I'm reporting, this is again reporting on behalf of Joe, who I'm hoping will be able to join us at the August meeting and meetings after that. But back to the USGS 10-year baseline study. The back and forth between Joe and the USGS continues. This is a 3-year testing program with like 10 different locations around the island to kind of to negate seasonal effects and locational effects. That's the good news. The comprehensiveness of this is the good news. The difficult news is that the same test panels that we used 10 years ago are no longer available. So we're trying to find the test panels that we can do now that are similar to those from 10 years ago. I'm not across all of the details of that. The USGS is getting back to Joe by early August with the different test panels and the pricing associated with those test panels. And so at the August meeting, Joe should be here, and we should have a recommendation as to exactly where he's coming from on this. In terms of cost, this is ranging, and these costs are rough, between $50,000 and $70,000 for the whole program, spread over 3 years, so say $20,000 a year. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this to have a comprehensive understanding of what's going on in the aquifer and hopefully to be able to trend that information on a consistent basis against where we were 10 years ago. And Joe feels, and I agree with him, that without this kind of a comprehensive and consistent and rigorous approach, we're kind of flying blind about what's going on in the aquifer. So that's more to come in August on that.
Is there I think you guys have said that you have a budget item or you know it's out there, so is there something we need to do as like a budget request for all the things that we're talking about? Formally sending you a letter saying, here's the funds that we're seeking over the whatever,
In fact, I'm meeting with the supervisor
Okay.
in early August with a budget request, and the item 7 that I just moved to the end of the agenda is the high points of that. So I want to make sure I've got everything on the list before I go meet with the supervisor.
And this is, we have been, signaling this each year in our budget discussions previously. This is coming up in 24, 23, we're like 26, 27, 28, we're into the years that are 10-year or 26, 27, 28. We're in the years after 2016 to 18 when we did the first of the 10-year baseline study programs.
I'm sorry, Meg.
I was just gonna say, Joe will also have it on his list too, so we make sure that we don't lose it. So you guys will have it on your list, Joe will have it on his list, and it'll definitely get to the board.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just ticking through some things, and this is reporting from him because Joe and I get together. Given that he has not been coming to these meetings, he and I have been spending time together on the phone. The USGS saltwater monitoring study. This, what did I do this? See? The good news is, this is funded by the feds. This is not funded by us. Current recommendation from the USGS is that there be 3 wells located in Sachem's Woods, 2 located in Sachem's Woods. They're very deep. They're looking at collecting chloride levels at different locations going down that hole. And the way the electronics work, the readings are basically constant. It's a continuous stream of readings. There'll be a second shallow well near the principal well, and that's to provide process water to actually help drill the big well. The good news there is that shallow well, that second shallow well, can be used to test water quality in Sachem's Woods if we ever get to that point. Does not have sufficient capacity to be a production well. It is simply a water quality testing well. There'll be a second well in the Wades Beach area, which is a monitoring well, which will be about 100 feet down. And so what that's going to help us understand is changes in chloride concentration between the center of the island and the periphery of the island. This is all proceeding pretty quickly in that the USGS is installing a similar setup over in Orient now and is ready after that to come and do the work on Shelter Island. So this is an example of things moving very quickly. So I don't really think if you have any technical questions, you have to go to Joe with them. That looks to me to be underway.
So just maybe because I'm like to close things, last meeting, we discussed Sachem, and Meg was kind enough to follow up because there was inquiries about what was the original intent in the acquisition of Sachem, I believe, and you can tell me if I perceived it right, is that when it was adopted for the purchase of Sachem, the resolution was not specific about the purpose, but there was enough historical record in Reporter and other articles of the discussions that the intent of the acquisition was not narrow. It had was broader in scope. Is that fair?
Yes.
So just, I think, because I know someone had a question for that, I think we're clear on that at the moment.
Good.
And these are,
Are we, let me just ask.
Unrelated, somewhat unrelated in the broader context, but it was.
well, that discussion all went to a production well.
Yes, I know, but
Using
you
that
just
land
mentioned
for
it, so I was we had never closed the follow-up. Meg followed up, but we didn't share that follow-up publicly.
So, I'm sorry, Peter?
The question I have is just, are we also pairing this? And I know that what you were just describing, I believe what you were suggesting was that everything you were just describing was through a grant from the federal government, not.
Correct.
There was the idea that we would also be characterizing the saltwater interface near shore using magnetic imaging, magnetic resonance studies. That I believe is not funded, and so I'm not sure if it's something that is on the queue for this year or something maybe that we want to defer. But I just wanted to, has there been any discussion of that magnetic studying of the saltwater interface, the shape of the saltwater interface?
I did not get into that with Joe.
Okay.
I did not.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up, I thought that he was actually trying to identify sites for it and it was still progressing, but we need his,
Yeah. But it's, I raise it only because it's a budget item and it's an unfunded budget at the moment. So it may be something that takes a couple of years for us to really have in place, but it is a powerful tool and has become a more powerful tool than it was 10 years ago. But it was combined with our baseline studying, was looking at the shape of the saltwater interface around the island, the periphery of the island.
I believe Joe is waiting on a quote from USGS to do that study.
Do the
So magnetic study. These two kind of came together at the same point, the well, the salinity, and the magnetic resonance study. So because the wells were being paid for by USGS as part of their larger Long Island project, that was able to move faster. The magnetic resonance, we needed a quote and a scope of work and all that from USGS, so he's working on that.
Funny enough, also,
It's not off the table, that's.
Is there a sense, depending on the cost, that we might be able to do all things? We're going to have to look at the numbers, or is the expectation you're going to have to prioritize these if they can't all come at once, or that's just, we have to have that discussion?
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a budget discussion, but I think the hope is that we can have all the things.
All at once.
Because it would make sense if you have the two wells
Yeah.
going in, then also to do the resonance study,
Yeah.
and you can kind of see how it
Same
changes
timing,
over
yeah.
time.
yeah, and I will add that at the time of doing the magnetic study 10 years ago, the USGS was saying what we would really need is some wells here to calibrate against. So now we have the wells. We'll see what happens when we try to put it all together, either this year or in subsequent years.
Okay. Next on the agenda is our objectives, the committee's objectives for the next 12 to 18 months. Now, I sent you a email and a memorandum, 5 or 6 page memorandum after the June meeting, which took all of the input from our discussion on this topic in June, and took all those suggestions and put them into 3 categories. One category was expand knowledge, and there were 3 initiatives under that. One, understand the aquifer from a quantitative perspective. That was Dave Ruby's initiative that he raised in the meeting. Second, understand the aquifer, do all the various testing and so forth, and we've been discussing various parts of it with the USGS studies and so forth from a qualitative perspective. And I had Meg Larson and Joe Fenora owning that initiative. And then the third, under expanding knowledge, was understand the institutional structures for a community water system, if that was the direction that we ended up going in. And that was something that Greg raised at the last meeting. The next category was public education. And to quote Peter from that discussion, it really was 3 words: test, 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 if everybody catches my emphasis. So it was, how are we going to get people to test their water, and all the various different elements of that. Who's going to do the testing? What's going to be tested for? How to stimulate real public interest in that? How to get it funded, so forth. So it was all about testing. And then the last category was projects. And there were 2. One was the Center Triangle, and the second was Bridge Street. So that kind of summarized the memo. And then at the end of the memo, I said, we are mighty, but this is a long list. And so I suggested, Gordon Gooding had some comments around how to deal with growth and so forth, particularly with regard to water. I suggested folding that into the Center Triangle Initiative. Meg had asked for a comprehensive plan on how to manage our coastline. I actually said, that strikes me as more of a planning function than a water advisory committee function. So I diplomatically punted on that. Then I looked at the Center Triangle and Bridge Street, and I had my name against both of those. And I said, Andrew, there is no way that you can take those on at the same time. So let's work on the Center Triangle first, because we've got a fair amount of momentum on that. And then I also said, well, we've got 1 name against these various items. Maybe 2 would help. 2 would kind of keep each other going when interest started to flag and so forth. So that was my approach. Now, so I sent you this memo, and I spent a fair amount of time doing it. And I'd like to, I'm curious as to your comments on the memo and whether we could, you want me to revise it, or whether I can, whether you'll endorse it as a committee.
I'm happy to endorse it. I think seems like the next stage is then, like, what are the incremental steps within each of those, so that we're getting much more specific about, how we're executing, so that when time is against us.
And so my answer to that would be each of the owners
Fair enough.
come forward with the incremental steps, and actually item 12 on the agenda are my suggestions for the incremental steps on the Center Triangle.
But Andrew, in terms of endorsing the statement, you're dropping the Bridge Street element of it.
I'm not dropping it. I'm putting it after the Center Triangle.
I see.
So, and when I say after, I think the real, what would you have to, the question is, what would you have to accomplish in the Center Triangle in order to say, okay, we got some momentum going there, now switch focus to Bridge Street? I would say a plan for dealing with it that has pretty broad community and town board and WAC endorsement. It's not waiting for something to happen in the ground.
Mm-hmm. So on the item that I have ownership over, which is, about education, and you characterized my point as test, test, test for the moment in terms of what we're communicating to the community. A lot of that, it's gotten out, and we've been very, very targeted and focused in our discussions. We were hoping maybe to get some funding together, but always knew that this was not something that actually needed funding. It needed awareness. And what I found is that the community we targeted, which was Monantic Peninsula, as I speak with community members there, and they have their annual meeting coming this weekend, they're really talking about testing. They're talking with each other about testing. And some of them have tested and have come to me with their tests. And that's actually a little bit of a flaw because, you know, as I'm the voice of educate around test, and others of, you know, the rest of you are as well. People are actually not knowing what to do with their tests other than protect themselves personally. Now, that's a very important point, is test because you need to know what you're drinking. You need to protect yourself personally. The tests that have come back to me, one was left off on my doorstep just yesterday, tend to have some alarming data within them. It's anecdotal, just here and there, scattered responses. But Elise also, Dave Ruby, before he was on the committee, also sent me his, and Joe, his water test. And again, we're seeing PFOS and PFOA readings, as well as 1,4-dioxane, a little lower, but the PFOS and PFOA readings are often above the potability limits. Now, those who've done those tests, I haven't, I've asked Dave actually, but each one of them seems to have taken the correct lesson from it, which is that they need filtration systems in their homes. And they've put in filtration systems in their homes. But what is lacking here is the sense that they know what to do with their tests in a communitarian sort of way, where to send them. I know that we did create a mailbox, an email address, I believe as well. I think sometimes people need snail mail because the tests come on paper. But I would, you know, I guess what I feel is lacking at the moment is clear communication, particularly on our webpage. So we can say, go to the WAC webpage, and you'll see the address to send a copy of your test. Or if you could scan it and email a copy of your test. And while we may not know exactly what we're doing with these tests, it behooves us, not me personally, but us, to be receiving them, looking at them, even if it's only giving us anecdotal information. It's important to be responsive to the community around testing.
Okay.
Create a two-way street. Educate them. I also just want to say the science piece of it, your first portion of it, you got to do that before you have something to educate people about.
Yep. Okay,
Hand up.
Sorry? Elise? Oh, sorry. Hand up, yeah. Oh, you go ahead.
Howard Johansson from the Conservation Advisory Council. A couple of items I'd like to discuss with you. Just first of all, the location of the test wells that we put. I don't think we should put it in Satcham's Woods, but the town property right next to Satcham's Woods, which abuts 114, because the two properties, the Satcham's Woods is part of the Nature Conservancy properties that we look over all the time to see what's going on and try to keep them clean of any construction. So there is the property between the IGA and this one, 69, that is town property. I would rather see those wells put on there and not interfere with the Nature Conservancy.
Is it Nature Conservancy?
No, not the Nature Conservancy. No, it's not. It's the
Preservation.
Preserve, Nature Preserve.
No, it's not CPF. It's not Nature Conservancy. It's the town. The town purchased the property.
Exactly.
And at the time discussed that it, you know, for multiple uses. But, you know, clearly there was definitely to keep development at, you know, to limited in that area. So your point is well taken. We don't want a lot of construction there. I'm not sure that these wells would involve a lot of construction, though.
Well,
I'm not sure they'd be visible particularly.
well, the construction to drill a well and stuff like that, and then there was some
Leave
talk
some
about
disturbance,
if
yeah.
we could use it. At least the Conservation Advisory Council should be notified of this. at
Absolutely.
once.
Absolutely.
The other one is Wade's Beach, which we also is part of the nature preserve area. We'd just like to take a look at them and see where they are. Maybe we could suggest a better location. There's no location. Wade's Beach, as you know, is a long strip. It's quite large, so if we could be part of that, I appreciate it.
So for Wade's Beach, it's going to go, let's say you drive in, to the right, there's that big rock right by the entrance. It's gonna go over right up against the reeds in the grassy area. So it's not going to be in a place where someone's gonna run it over. It's gonna be out of the beach area. It's not gonna be in the parking lot, so it should be out of the way.
Well, I'd like to see that. We could review it,
Sure.
so.
And Howard is like the person who tests the most. So, you know, he's our instructor of, you know, getting your water tested.
Yeah, it's important to test in every neighborhood, which is good. But I think we have a problem that, you know, our community is a resort community, and a lot of renters come every summer to love the community, and it's great profits being made. It's rent for $30,000 a month or something properties, and they load up their house with tenants. I mean, and I think maybe we should look at the requirements for rentals, that they test their water first of all, so they're not giving polluted water to the tenants that are coming. They have no idea what they're getting. And that we look at, that is done every year before the rental agreements come out. So I think that's something we should look at. And that way we'd have testing all over Shelter Island and every part of Shelter Island if the town takes that on. And I guess that would be sort of public news that we could look at our water quality. Yeah, since
It's an interesting one, yeah.
so that's the two things I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Okay,
Well, the reason why we're not using that other lot that Howard brought up is because that's the lot that we're gonna be building community housing on. So people know that.
You might not be available.
okay.
But they would have to have a well anyways.
It's a different type of well.
Yeah. As you said before, the wells they're drilling are not to be used for production. They're not developed, they're not drilled in a way that's to generate capacity in that way. They're much, which in some ways presumably then is less invasive than a full-on well. Yeah. Yeah.
Trucks and stuff like that, but
It's showing, originally when the wells, there was a well, Suffolk County Water Authority at one time there was a proposal to test the wells on the west side. Okay, that testing was never done, and the explanation that was given at the time is to support what Howard is talking about, is that the town, this is the explanation that was given to me from Joe Fenora, is that it would be disturbing too much of the land to install the wells. Now, whether that's true or not, but that was there's been so many gyrations of this, okay? And remember on that, anyhow,
Yeah, because coming in from the west side, it wasn't level enough, so they would have had to level an area in order to do it. Coming in from the east on 114, where they're planning to do it now, they don't have to do any of that leveling or really clearing. So they found an area that doesn't disturb stations as much as coming in from the west side. That was.
I think that's questionable, I think that's very questionable, but I think what Howard is asking for as a courtesy is to just basically be able to see what, what you're doing, and listen, that, it's not a production well, okay, and I get it.
Okay, so we'll ask Joe to come in August and tell us exactly where those test wells are going to go.
And the rationale for those spots, and then.
Correct.
Yeah.
I also think I would like to, I'd love to give Elise a chance, but just to mention, the idea here is presumably to understand the full shape of the freshwater lens that we have. We're drilling now in the deepest part, the thickest area. If we go forward, we're drilling in the deepest part of the island, the thickest part of the freshwater lens, and we really do need to know, what's the bottom of that lens shape. We know it's very shallow at the near shore areas.
Okay.
They said how deep they're going?
For the saltwater and for the saltwater, 1,000 or more feet,
Yeah.
way down.
They did a well in Nantucket and went down to pre-glacial levels and found fresh water
Oh, that's interesting.
from pre-glacial.
They found a pocket like that off of Fire Island.
So I'm wondering if this is
Yeah,
the same kind of, this will add to that study.
it's part of
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
intriguing.
pulling us back to item, I guess it's 10.
But Andrew, could we, did you want Elise to be able to, she has had her hand up for a while. on
Sorry?
the Testing. problem.
Yes, Elise?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Peter. I do appreciate Peter's comments about coordinating more info to the property owners and the associations regarding the water testing gathered data. I feel like we don't know where we stand right now, and we're making a really large concerted effort in the Menindee Peninsula to get that information out and to cajole, not pressure, but have everybody participate. So I'd love to see how effective we're being. So that would be great information. Plus, I absolutely love the suggestion Howie made about the water testing for rentals. I actually think that probably should be part of the agreement. But that's my 2 cents. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Elise.
And Williams is a teacher.
Yeah,
Science teacher. Okay.
well,
That's what you
it's
want.
next. So can I have a motion to endorse my memo of June 17?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we move in second. Okay, good. Passed. Fine. Now,
Good.
Dave, you're up.
Thank
Item
you.
11.
Thank you. And we have Dan Williams, who's online, is the science teacher at the high school, who has agreed to participate in this, and I think that's just a wonderful thing. So if he wants to come in at some point, please do. This whole started with, I guess, the article that I sent around to folks about the saltwater intrusion that's everybody knows about. But anyway, I was thinking that if there was an easy way to get people to just sample their home water, not scientific, nothing sophisticated, sample their home water just for chloride, which is, I think, of interest for a few people around here. With minimal expense that the Water Advisory Committee could fund, it would raise awareness for testing and maybe generate more interest.
And Dave, you actually, one other thing that was very interesting, and it's the reason you've brought Dan in, is that you had suggested engaging the high school students.
Yes, yeah, there, and I found there are 2 tests, and I'll let Dan, when he gets into it, evaluate which one he wants to do. But there's a short video, if we can do that, of just the one test and just show you how easy this stuff is. One is Aquaphoenix, and the other is by Hack. That was from Greg Nissen. He recommended them. And they're both under $2 a test. So
And
that-
Dan has put up his hand, so I would love to
Yeah.
bring him in before just doing the playback. Humans rule.
absolutely. Dan?
Dan?
The
Dan, you have the floor.
Probably on me.
He's on mute, yeah.
Yeah, you're on mute, Dan, if you can hit your space bar or the unmute icon. No?
Anyway, maybe we'll go to the video and he'll,
Go to the video, come back.
yeah. This is not for chloride, but it gives you the idea. Lost the audio. But anyway, the point is you break the tip to open the tube up.
And presumably there's a color chart that then tells us how much chloride we have in the water. Oh, there it is.
Okay, so Dave, take us through the plan here and what,
But the first plan would be to get the sample collection bottles out to the public. I looked around, the typical one would be the urine collection container that you go to the doctors with. But fortunately, I found some that weren't as specifically designated. But anyway, the collection container is 50 cents a piece. So, and that would just be the first investment we would have to make, because we don't need to do the tests right then and there. And in fact, Dan can't do the test until school starts again. So I was thinking that both at the Green Expo Fair, we could have these containers available. Also, I was thinking we could have some lawn signs at the intersections, say, pick up your container, perhaps here at Town Hall. I think that would be the most.
Put kids at tables in front of IGA, and
We could do that, too.
and if you do that, you can also hand out the Suffolk County water testing form at
Let's just do one thing.
Okay, but again, I think that this is I don't know how
wait a minute,
scientific
Peter,
we can get.
Peter, wait a minute. Take us through the steps.
All right, so that would be the first.
I think Dan is there now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Dan.
Dan, are you on?
I am. I didn't realize I had to press a button before I pressed unmute. Sorry.
It's okay. Welcome. Yeah, Dan, explain, you're the science guy.
Right.
Well, the only thing is, you were discussing about how you were going to collect the water samples. I come in after that, so I don't know if you want to finish that out first.
All right, yeah, no, that's fine. So the containers are the upfront purchase, 200 for $100, so 50 cents. We could start there. I don't know how,
Right.
you know, and you know, I would hope that we would get at least 500, 600. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's the minimal expense to start with. Hand out the containers as I say, at the Green Expo here, get people to fill them up for a simple procedure, 5-minute run, fill it up. Question, I guess, will be, we'll return the samples to perhaps the high school, if you think that's doable after the start of school, or else here in the
Okay.
interim. There's some details to work out.
They'll have their names written on the
Well,
samples.
no, that's the other thing. I was thinking, and our center water testing experience, perhaps we want to not have names associated
Okay.
with the samples, but we should have addresses and a telephone number for follow-up, or, you know, if something
Okay,
significant is found, you would have a telephone number, and that is also your index number for the test. So
Okay.
you would publish results by telephone number. You know, it's semi-autonomous. People can always figure out somebody's name from their telephone number, but at least it gives you some level of autonomy for the results. Put your telephone number and your address on the sample, drop it off. That's the homeowner's done, homeowner's finished. And then Dan takes over from there. So, did you see the video, by the way, Dan?
Yes, I did. I reviewed it before the meeting.
Good.
So thank you for including me. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for Shelter Island and for our students. And, you know, all meeting long, I've been hearing about educating the public and educating the public, and citizen science, I believe, is a great way to do that. And using student citizen scientists, I think is a fantastic way as well. So as you mentioned, we'd have to figure out how we'd get the water samples to the school. And I have two different methods that I'd have to kind of see how we would do this in the classroom. One is the science research class, which would give us a group of students who are dedicated to you know, the highest level, the highest standards of science, and it would have to be overseen by me to make sure that we're not getting sketchy results. I will say I was a little uncomfortable when you watch the video with the audio on. It says just drop the solution in little bits, and then you'll get that pink color change. That, the way it implied on the video was that color change means stop. And then you would go and read the meniscus on the level, and that would tell you about how much of the ions you have within the solution. My problem is if you're familiar with titration, if you go too quick, the color change will be after the fact of your exact titration amount. So it made me a little nervous in that we'd have to be really, really careful that the students go insanely slow. But that would be on my end. I could make sure that we handle that. So it was not a drop the solution to a measured amount and then look at a color band. It was draw until the color change.
That's right.
The other solution that you sent to me, I didn't see any documentation on it where I was able to determine whether it was good, easy, better. It just looked like it was maybe a dipstick check kit. I wasn't exactly sure.
I didn't research that one either, Dan.
Okay.
So I'll leave that up to you. That's your area.
But you know, we'd make sure that, you know, the one area would be science research students as part of their duties within the class overseen. The other would be science club, which would open up to a broader range of students who would come in, and in either direction, I was hoping that the students would report back their findings to, I don't know if you have open meetings or if it would be to a town board meeting or whatever, but to also have the students do a little bit of background research and a presentation on it, part of that public education.
We would love to have the students do a presentation to us.
Yeah.
All our meetings are open, and it would be such a blast to have a group of students come join us.
I would love that.
And
They'll hate me for
your
it, but
enthusiasm in bringing them in and, you know, activating them that turns them into the future generation of educators for their parents. So that's the whole key is, this process and how that plays out into the future. So thank you.
I wholeheartly agree.
Okay, do you
I
want,
think H also has it doesn't have, they have another test in addition to the dipsticks, but I think you'll find it, but I didn't gather the materials on it. But just, that's something for the science class to look at, and that's for you, Dan, to decide what the best is. I suppose if you wanted to do titrations, you could do it, but it's up to you.
Can I ask you a quick
Yeah.
question?
Sean?
So by virtue of the anonymity and just using the telephone number, we're not getting a geographic sense, but you're just
No, the
getting,
address is on the sample.
you're going to put the physical address.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah.
And do you have a sense of if it's properly sealed, they can sit for a couple of months while they're being tested?
Oh, yeah, it's just water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just has to be sealed enough that there's no
It's not
evaporation
biological, it's
or
just-
whatever.
Just your chloride, which is stable.
Yeah.
Which are you saying? It's the sample?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's sealed tight enough, there's
It's not
no
going to evaporate.
constant evaporation or, whatever, or like, there's just, how long can you, like, if we collect them next week, can they wait until September? Like, kind of
So
thing.
you are talking
Yeah.
about the same.
I'm sure. My conundrum is how to get the data out. And we could certainly have a spreadsheet with the telephone numbers and results. How do you publish it? I don't.
Let the kids develop a presentation.
No, I mean, a homeowner, how would we get the information made available to the homeowner? So that they could look up their telephone number and see their chloride level.
Why couldn't we post it on the website?
Put it on the website.
They they scan it and look at their home number, and look at their phone
Can
number.
we, Fine. It's
With,
good with me.
with an explanation of what the data means.
If you got the phone number, it's, hello, is this Mr. Sims? Yeah, good news, your salt was fine.
Well, I don't think we're gonna have the students do the.
Yeah, well,
phone.
No,
They
but
could.
if you develop a document, yes, post it on the website.
All right.
Have them present here so that people are more aware of it. Maybe it'll get some coverage in the paper because it's a fun project and it's a very cool community effort. And at the same time, yeah, you'll have, I mean, it won't be definitive, but there'll be high school science, but it's all good.
Okay, so I'm hearing nothing but ringing endorsement for this.
Terrific.
Thanks for coming up with this
Thanks,
initiative. Dan, thank you very much. Look forward to working with you. Dave, thank you for initiating this.
Sure.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you
Do
for
we have
inviting
money
me.
in the budget that we can afford the few $100s or whatever it is and just go?
I think we're probably good for it if we have to. Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. May I just
I'm not
just
saying that.
reiterate something on this conversation that Sean just brought up about the chloride testing and the samples themselves?
Sure, Pam, go ahead.
Yes, I used to do this testing years ago, and the samples are really only good for 28 days. The testing must be done within 28 days. The sample will diminish. It is EPA standards for water testing that if a sample is taken later than that and not stored under refrigeration or something, you might get a false positive or a poor result. So there are limitations on how long you can let the sample sit. And it's possible that you could get vials or sampling containers that have a good seal on them so that you really do get very good science out of it. It might cost a little more than 50 cents a jar, but if you're really looking to get good data, I would suggest that you can initiate this idea at the expo, which I think is wonderful. But the sampling shouldn't get done until the kids are ready to really do the test itself. I just thought I'd let you know.
Pam, could I ask, would you be willing to engage with Dave and with Dan as a kind of in a kind of supervisory way?
I can certainly look into really better sampling jars for the process. Yeah, I'd really like it to be right, but sure.
I don't know what Dan's
Absolutely.
schedule is for the school. We didn't get that far.
Well, yeah, but you guys are forming a small subcommittee to do this in a way that gives the kids a feeling of pride in what they're doing.
Good.
It really is a very simple test, honestly, no matter how you do it. Chloride is one of the easiest contaminants or water constituents to test for. It's not,
If we get
it's really
500,
not rocket science.
we get 500 results, we're talking about less than 2,000.
Okay. All right. 12, center water strategy. This is one of the items on our list of things to be accomplished over the next 12 to 18 months. I want to summarize our current situation and then propose a way forward. So the current situation, and I'm talking about the center triangle. We've got a lot of homes on lots that are less than the minimum lot size. In other words, they're non-conforming. That means that the separation distance, horizontal separation distance between the wells and the septic systems may not be adequate to ensure potable water in the wells. We've also got town buildings with sewage disposal systems that are not consistent with current practice. We've all known this for a long time. In November of 2023, we tested 158 wells on a voluntary basis, focused on nitrates, nitrites, and bacteria. In other words, this was not a full potability test. Jessica, could you pull up that page that I referenced? This is all summarized in a PowerPoint that's on our website. And the page that you see shows the test results by general area. And to summarize this, the red indicates wells with water that on a nitrate or nitrite basis, it was mostly nitrates, was non-potable. The yellow indicates the number of wells with test results on nitrates that were within what's called the EPA action level, which is 5 to 10 milligrams per liter. Over 10 milligrams per liter, you're non-potable. And the blue indicates the number of test results below 5 milligrams per liter. Okay, this was all discussed in November of 2023. And this document is a public document, is on our website. This is not new information. Okay. What does this tell me? It tells me that there is an indicator that we need to understand this better. It does not necessarily tell me that there is a problem, but it tells me there could be a problem. Now, why do I say that? I say that not because of the 6 or 7% of these tests that came up non-potable. I say it because of the 50% or so tests that came up in the EPA action level with nitrates between 5 and 10 milligrams per liter. And why do I say that? Because nitrates at that level are, in all likelihood, come from some kind of septic influence. So you've got some septic influence going on that even though in the large percentage of the wells, it's still potable, but we didn't test for everything. We just tested for nitrates. And to quote a former town engineer, nitrates do not travel alone. So there's a possibility that we've got more going on here than just nitrates. Now, what do we not know from these results? We don't really know where the problem is. And 2 years ago, when we discussed this, we cautioned against using a homeowner using the results by zone to make a rough judgment about their own well water quality. In other words, oh, I live in zone, let's say I live in zone 12, and only like 10% of my wells down in zone 12 came up in the EPA action level, I must be fine. Because you don't know where those tests were in zone 12. And also, in zone 12, the number of tests was very small. It's only 8. So when you get into the individual zones, because the N numbers, or the number of tests, is such a small number, those proportional results are easy to challenge from a statistical standpoint because your number of samples is too low. So we don't know the extent of the problem. We don't know exactly where the problem is. What we do have is a reasonable indicator that there could be a problem and that we need better definition. All right. So kind of reflecting on all this, I am, and again, you know, I've taken it upon myself to own this center water strategy and move us forward on this. My view is the first thing we need to do is we need to do a lot more testing in the center. The testing needs to be full potability testing. In other words, we're not just looking for nitrates and nitrites and so forth. It needs to be the whole gamut of a potability test. Now, the good news is the Suffolk County Department of Health will do those tests for $100. You go get a private company to do these tests and they're $1,000. So to me, step one is, what do we have to do to get, you know, there are 500 wells in that triangle. What do we have to do to get 250 or 300 wells tested across full potability? That's going to tell us the extent of the contamination, or it's going to tell us what the contamination is. It's going to tell us the concentration of the contamination, and it's going to tell us where it is. Once we know that, we can design solutions to deal with that problem, with whatever that problem comes out. There is no point, I don't think, in having a lot of hypothetical discussions or getting all stirred up about, well, if we find this, then that's going to happen and so forth, because we don't know. We may, for example, end up with very small isolated pockets of contamination, which would lead you to a very different result than widespread contamination. But we don't know that yet, so let's do the testing. So step number one in my world is, my recommendation is, do the testing. And that'll help, that'll enable us to understand what the contaminants are, what concentrations they're occurring, and where they're occurring. I don't exactly know how to get the testing done. I was going to go see the Suffolk County Department of Health if you guys support this approach, I was going to go see the Suffolk County Department of Health and also sit with Joe and figure out different ways of doing this. So I'm not that far yet. I just wanted to get some endorsement behind further testing.
I think you put the state of play perfectly. I agree with you. The major kind of then decision is this, your effort is outreach to encourage them to test at their own expense. And that, like that question mark of, is our effort going to be, it's kind of education based of sorts of, here's the form, here's the whatever, we're encouraging you, we're making it readily available, all that kind of stuff, but you gotta do it. Or are you asking, and that's going to be, maybe you're not there yet and kind of how you feel about it. Are you asking the town to create subsidy or do, whatever? I think that's a bigger obstacle, but I think that I agree with you that there has to be some, like I keep repeating it, I can go door to door with the form and whatever, and just put it like, I don't know how to get these people to the table, but that's, I think, the major part of the discussion. And I would just add, one thing that jumped out at me, not to sidetrack, is having looked at some of the information in that PowerPoint, if I'm correct, I believe there were like 10 to 12 homes that showed bacteria, something of the sort. So my one question was, and then the inference was there may be failing or lack of proper maintenance for those septic tanks. Were those the same homes that had high nitrogen really bad?
I'd have to go back and look.
Because I think that's
So
really interesting.
The graph was nitrogen only. We did have a range of homes that had bacteria that tends to be damage to the well itself. Something gets into the dirt, gets into the well. And so, there is a pretty straightforward solution to that. Everybody who had that was informed that they needed to clean their systems. It just takes a day.
That was my question. Yeah, what was the?
So that that's great. I also think that in terms of the how, Andrew, one of the things, so what I'm aware of is that Suffolk, and Meg will tell you this too, Suffolk County Health Department sometimes goes into certain communities and on its own decides these whole range of houses need to be tested. If we can at all entice them and say, look, we've developed this indication of high nitrogen in the center. We know there's been a problem there. We don't have a good characterization of the PFAS and 1,4-dioxane and all the other emerging concerns that we've been seeing in that area. Would you be willing to do a proactive testing in our center triangle area? They can only say no, and they must have their own decision-making process, but I would love to bring them into it so that we could just have it happen with nobody's expense as part of their standard process. Last comment is just that, we're moving toward dealing with nitrogen-only problems in the municipal center buildings. I think that that's a great thing. We have to reduce nitrogen. But we should be thinking, and what you're doing is bringing up the possibility of thinking beyond nitrogen. And since we know PFAS has become a significant contaminant, we need to have awareness of that and awareness of what is the beyond nitrogen strategy. It may just be, letting people know they need to put a filtration system in, but we should be explicit about what is the beyond nitrogen strategy.
Okay, so let me take a couple of these questions in order.
Yep.
One, with regard to who pays for the tests, our budget, I recommend our budget request, at least in my initial discussions with the supervisor, include $25,000 for testing, which is 250 tests at $100 a piece. So I'm going to ask for that. I think Peter's suggestion of going to the Suffolk County Department of Health and alerting them to these, reminding them of these results as an indicator of an area that's potentially under septic influence and getting them to proactively do a round of testing at their cost. I'm definitely going to ask them for that, but I don't know what they're going to say. My view is that our community has talked about this issue for as long as I've been here, which is 2.5 decades. So let's get to the bottom of it. So, and $100 per test doesn't strike me as a lot to really figure out the nature of the problem. So I don't frankly think that the money ought to stop us. If we can find the money from some other party, great. But if not, we ought to do it.
Okay. Who has the raw data gotten to Suffolk?
I don't know.
We get them the raw data for, that might convince them before you even show up.
Okay, fine.
I don't recall it going that way.
It was done by Goldman, so.
It was done by
Is
Goldman, but it was
Given it to the county.
It was done in a way where we did not have the actual address information.
But Goldman did. Excuse me. County would.
I think we kind of like, spit in our fist and, kick the cat to say, no, don't worry, we're not going to let your information go out. We're not going to ever have it. And I think Goldman was pretty tired with this whole thing, with that effort.
It was a lot of effort for them.
Joe spoke to them about the results, so he definitely went over it with Jason
Yep.
from the health department.
Right.
They've spoken about it, so he's aware of the results. I don't know if they have a copy of the data, but they definitely are aware that it's a situation.
All right, and with regard to the data, whatever promises or expectations were set with the homeowner about where the data was going to go, we have to honor. So that's my answer to that question.
You mean the data that's going to be developed or the data that developed back then?
Well, the data, both.
Okay.
The data that was developed back then, certainly, because that data is in somebody's files. So we got to protect that confidence.
Right, it's the summary data that is what can be, the summary which you just essentially presented in graphical format. That's, that is the picture that they're not going to get any, you're not going to get, they're not going to reanalyze the raw
Right.
data.
But Suffolk.
It would be a shame to not know how, as we were talking about with the salt, it'd be a shame to not know what facility it is, what
For
building.
the future test, for the one that we're
Yeah,
doing.
future test.
Right. Gordon?
Andrew, I know it's gotten late, okay, but I just, a couple of comments, okay? We know some information, okay? We, like you said, we've known a lot of information for a long time, okay? We have one aquifer, okay? And we were talking about testing, which is, I agree, it's very important. The question that what I'm a little stumbling over is, what things can we do that have positive impacts on our water right now? Okay, or our quality of our water? And I think it really has to deal with the septics that are here. We know that in every study I've seen on any island, whether it's Block Island or whatever, 70% of the nitrate problems come from the individual septic systems, okay? Yes, I'm dealing here in the center because this is how this whole conversation began. But we have no regulations, and I guess, I don't know whether this is the right committee or the WAC committee is the right one,
We are.
but we have nothing in terms of any regulations in terms of even our cesspools. We have no, we're not doing any, when title changes, when houses change, there's a lot of things that we can do, okay? And start to implement, okay, with that are very simple things that people have done for a long time, that our counterparts in Nantucket and Block Island have done. Where the testing is not the solution, you're looking to identify the seriousness of the problems. But like even here in the center, we sat here, the school is taking care of its septic systems. Yeah, obviously, I'm concerned about the municipal buildings because I think we have an obligation as a
Right,
municipal.
but Gordon, you are missing.
Peter,
Let me speak, please.
Peter,
Well, yeah,
do not
okay.
interrupt.
Okay, this is where.
Thank you. Gordon?
This is where
Gordon,
we get into problems, okay?
Keep going.
But so my thing is, I think that with all the committees, we have a thread that connects us all together, okay? And what I mean by that, how do we clean up, nitrates may not be all the problems, but we don't know enough about even the individual properties in terms of separation of septics. We don't know these things. I think, and again, this goes back to people who have property rights issues that, we're adding expense to their houses and everything else. But I think that the water underneath your home is not for you to do anything you want with, okay? And I think the same thing with the septics. I think we just have to identify, and we should have we talked about title changes, okay? This was briefly talked about, it's going to be a bad thing. Well, I'm not so sure. If we're really serious about it, what's wrong with even if a house changes title, to inspect the septic system to see if they have a cesspool?
Okay, so
Okay,
what you're
So what I'm
talking
saying is,
about,
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what you're going down. I'm just saying to you, I'm looking at what things like here, if we clean up the center here, it's gonna have some impact. Okay, there's no question, the quality of the septics coming out of a cesspool here in the center will improve the quality of water downstream.
Right. But Gordon, we appreciate that you're
hold it,
working
Peter.
on the nitrogen. No, excuse me a second.
Can I just
I
say something,
appreciate
please?
that. We
Can I
appreciate
just
the
say
work.
something, please?
Peter.
Peter, would you,
No,
can I
Peter,
just say something
You
to
have been
you?
speaking
Hold on.
for a while.
I don't
Peter.
raise my
I'll
voice.
allow you to
No,
share.
Peter.
However,
Gordon, let him.
however, the
Peter.
point is
Peter.
beyond nitrogen. What
Peter.
we don't know beyond nitrogen.
No one's listening, Peter.
I said what I had to say.
Okay. Gordon, you're on, and then I want to respond to you. Or I'm happy to respond.
So, this is really,
No, because I want to agree with you, Gordon.
I'm not looking to argue with anybody.
No.
I'm just giving a different point of view, okay? And this is not to talk about an issue, okay, that you may have some thoughts on, doesn't mean you're against anything, okay? And that's what we seem to get ourselves in. I'm just giving you a different perspective, okay, that by cleaning up the center water, it has an impact, okay? And I think we really, the testing is going to do some great things, and I really support that. I think there's a lot of things, okay, that we have to take more serious. There's been a lot of money spent on the island. We know the septics are there, so it's not just about the testing. We need, as a town, we need to implement some things that have some serious impacts, and such as when we talked about a house being sold, okay, wouldn't it be nice to know if there was a cesspool there?
So what you're suggesting is additive, okay? It is a valuable perspective and it's additive. Because what you're getting at, if I could put it in one sentence, when you're in a hole, stop digging, okay? Because we have a problem. And so what you're getting at is, what is the root cause of the problem? And let's get at it. Where I was coming from was that problem is created a drinking water issue, which we need to deal with. But you're talking about the root cause. So I want to know all of your ideas on that. And because it's part of the center strategy. All right, wastewater and drinking water are inseparable. Okay, so I thank you for your perspective, okay? And I want to know what you would put on that list. And I want that to come before the committee. And Meg, go ahead.
I've already studied that. I can tell you exactly how many cesspools we have on the island, how many standard precast septic systems that are county approved, and how many IA systems we have. So I have all that data already done.
Good.
So we started working.
And I guess part of that question to me is, I think all your points are well taken. Not to answer now, but what do you want from us? Do you want us to look at, I've mentioned it before, some sort of septic regulation. So, do you want us to consider it and decide whether we want to make a recommendation to the town board to consider? What are you looking at from us? Because a lot of this is in your guys' hands. But we can be supportive and say, actually, we think that's a good idea, and we're going to go on record saying we're supportive. But I would give it some thought, not to answer now because it's late, but what do you want from us to support
I'd like to
those?
continue with the conversation.
Yeah.
And I will come back to you with some things. okay?
No, I mean, I'll answer what I think our role is.
Yeah.
There's an issue with the underlying resource. How do we address the root causes of what's going on with the underlying resource? What we do, so for example, something like, and I'm making this up, require a septic tank, a septic system evaluation in order for property to change hands or something like that. Okay? What we do will have a long-term positive effect on the aquifer, but not an immediate effect.
Exactly.
Drinking water will have an immediate effect, could have an immediate effect on what people are drinking. We have to proceed with both. Okay? And there's every reason for us to come up with a set of recommendations that gets at the long-term root cause and also gets at the immediate drinking water issue. We can do, what we come up with can cover both. So all these ideas are valid. And let's assemble them. Peter.
Again, the point of this agenda item was that the nitrogen studies, that the Center Triangle nitrogen studies gave us an indication that there is a problem, but we don't have a fine enough understanding of the extent of the problem, particularly with respect to the 200 other compounds that would be analyzed through Suffolk County Health Department tests. So, and in particular, of course, we're deeply concerned about PFAS, and the related compounds. Those require that kind of very, very fine-tuned testing, full panel testing, in order to know what the problem is. The strategies, therefore, that we pursue, maybe we find out there's no PFAS in our aquifer, but assuming that that's not what we find, we then have to have strategies that do address that. And it's very important for the public to understand that advanced septic systems by themselves, without further thinking, do not address that. Filtration might, so, but it governs the approach you're going to take in order to keep people safe, both in the Center Triangle and then in the wider area, the nearshore areas that are just downstream from the Center Triangle.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Yes,
one last thing.
Sean.
So just as a matter of procedure, you have talked about several different areas of budget requests.
Yep.
At some point, it would be appropriate for us to endorse what your requests are when you get to that point. I don't particularly want to do it today. I think the USGS, all those other things, I think are probably, easy ones. Paying for someone else's test, I need to think about a little bit because there's been so much objection to that, but I think at some point you need to put it to does everyone in the committee endorse that budget request? So.
Okay, so unfortunately, I am going to put it to you today because I have to go to the supervisor on August 6th with a budget request, and I want to go with your back. There is some, what I'll call budgetary noise in there. Sorry, Jessica, but we get an allocation of Jessica's expenses. I don't want to call you budgetary noise. I hope you're not offended by that. We get an allocation of various other expenses, okay? But in round numbers, our current budget is $60,000, okay? 25 of that is for the well level monitoring that Greg reports on. Then there's another 20 that's in there for testing in 2025 that hasn't been used. Okay, but take that headline, and then there's noise. So take that headline number of 60,000. This year, I'm going to ask for 90. That consists of, I'm going to ask for about 70. That consists of 1 year of the USGS 3-year testing program, and 25,000 for the center, 250 center water quality. The assumption there is the town pays for them. We're putting that in the budget request, so we have it. That's not a decision at this point that that's what we want to do, because we can always give the money back, and we can always give the money back to the general fund. So I'd like your endorsement of that 70K, of those two big items. And I will also say there's a possibility that we want to explore the possibility of water quality improvement fund funding for some of that testing. So I may not need all of it, but I'd like to go to the supervisor with a request for 70.
If I
And
could,
that doesn't include a magnetic resonance, so that's
No,
a
it does not.
question at the moment.
Correct.
That ideally, as we move to full-on budget, we would
Yeah.
know whether we want what that deal is.
I don't have that in there.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak a little bit. The WQI funding, we made a statement 3 years ago, when this thing was set up, and we said that technically this probably falls outside of our purview of what we could fund. But we said, okay, we do have some portion of it that could allow us to advertise or to promote people to using it. And then that was the basis that we did this test, which was one of the reasons why, okay, it was 158 people. How many people was it 700 people letters were sent to, something like that?
500.
500, yeah.
Yeah. So, even at having it paid, it was only 158 people, so. Things have changed now, and now there's that group that determines what the WQI funds can be used for. And I can't believe that I'm saying that, but that should be investigated as well.
Okay. So the headline number is 70,000. May be able to get a portion of the 10-year baseline study funded by the WQI, don't know. That was Joe's
question. Don't know.
That was Joe's suggestion. We should look there.
Well, that would be also that, this group that now exists, because they changed the state legislation.
Okay.
So what will they say?
So anyway, so I'd like your endorsement of that. So when I go see, go see the supervisor, I'm speaking on all of our behalf, as opposed to just mine.
So moved.
Peter's moved.
I would move to approve the 70K.
Okay.
For a point of clarification, you're asking for permission or to ask for a 70,000 budget, but we are not yet determining that we want to fund that from our funds because we want to explore other avenues of will Suffolk County do it for free? Could we get WQIA? So that final determination of, yes, we want to do that, use that money to do X is still on hold.
I'm not asking you to sign the check.
Yep. I'll endorse that. Yep.
Yeah, I'll pass on. I'll go yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous? All right.
We're unanimous.
Unanimous, good. Any other business before the group? The good of the order? Nope. Any public comment for the good of the order? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's hard to keep them down to 1.5 hours. It's very tough.